I believe a high performer is a decision maker. I really think it's that simple because you can't take action unless you've made a really good decision for yourself, something you're certain in, something maybe you got some outside advice for or did some research, but you've gotten to that point where it feels right in you to do something that you make the decision. And then everything
Mm.
becomes natural. You start attracting more of that, what that would be, or how you would be, and how you want to be in the future, how you want to be described. All of it starts to become attracted to you more. And if you keep flexing that decision making muscle and keep choosing the right things, choosing the right coach, choosing the right course, choosing the right daily habits, choosing the right yeses, choosing the right nos, all of these things ultimately contribute to somebody becoming a high performer.
Welcome to the podcast. Nathan Newberry here, your host. I have uh, Amy here on our podcast today. Amy Landino. She is a three-time best-selling author, keynote speaker, and she has a coaching company around building personal brand. Amy, super stoked to have you on the call today.
Thank you, Nathan. I'm so pleased to be here.
Yeah. Tell us at the very beginning here, before we dive into your story some more, what is the definition that you believe from what you've done all these years to build up success that a high performer is? What's the definition in your mind of what exhibits that for you most?
I believe a high performer is a decision maker. I really think it's that simple because you can't take action unless you've made a really good decision for yourself, something you're certain in, something maybe you got some outside advice for or did some research, but you've gotten to that point where it feels right in you to do something that you make the decision. And then everything
Mm.
becomes natural. You start attracting more of that, what that would be, or how you would be, and how you want to be in the future, how you want to be described. All of it starts to become attracted to you more. And if you keep flexing that decision making muscle and keep choosing the right things, choosing the right coach, choosing the right course, choosing the right daily habits, choosing the right yeses, choosing the right nos, all of these things ultimately contribute to somebody becoming a high performer. So I just think of a high performer as somebody who's really good at saying yes or no to something based on what they, from a gut check, can say is important to them. And ultimately, when you get that confidence boost of choosing, you follow through because
Mm.
you're basically holding yourself accountable at that point. Everyone's holding you accountable at that point, especially the more public your decisions tend to be. So, yeah,
Yeah,
I just think that you become a high performer when you get really good at making decisions. And a lot of people struggle with that. A lot of people
they
struggle
do.
with that. We're constantly looking for other people to tell us what to do and tell us which way to go. And we can feel confident that we really know what that is for ourselves.
Yeah. The first lie at the very beginning was blaming others for bad decisions, right? And so I know so many times we try to find the scapegoat or we don't really want to make the hard decisions, but that's not always easy. How did you end up from the very beginning of your entrepreneurship journey learning how to make those wise decisions and really kind of help you hone in on like building up to the success now that you have?
I mean, at the beginning for me, I was at a job I thought I was going to have to keep and stay at forever because I liked it. I thought it was the right thing. I dropped out of college because I had this job. And at the time, nobody was graduating college and getting jobs with their degrees because of the state of the economy in '07, '08, '09.
Mm,
And so I was like, well, I've got to keep my job. I got this bougie, fabulous fundraising job in a prestigious law office, and I could graduate with my poli sci degree, but I've got the job they all want. So I'm going to stay here and do this. So I had that job, and all of a sudden, I'm just finding a creative outlet. I started making videos for fun. It all kind of just came about very organically, just random things happening. And someone that I knew told me that I was really good at this social media thing. Now, granted, I'm hearing this when Facebook is in its heyday. It's 2008, 2009, actually, I think early 2009. And I'm like, what do you mean I'm good at social media? Everyone's doing this. It's so much fun. Everyone has a Facebook. Everyone's good at it. And she was like, no, you don't understand. Businesses are not good at it. They have no idea what's coming. And I'm
mm-hmm,
a graphic designer. There's another person that gets hired like me to do this as a living, like contractually doing social media for a business. And she just blew my mind with that information. Now, somebody can tell you these things and open your mind to something, but unless you start to feel like you are jiving with the idea altogether, it's not going to factor into that decision making process, right? But once she told me that, I felt like I was on a fact finding mission. I was like, I need to find out if she's full of it or if this is a real thing. Because in Lowell, Ohio, where I was living, that was not the case. But she's on the West Coast. She sees that these trends are happening faster there. So I look into it
Mm-hmm.
and I realize this is a thing. And I tell you what, I remember the first decision I made was, oh my gosh, I am going to work for myself. And I lost sleep about the idea that I had to quit my job because I knew it had to happen. Like I had this thought, I can do this. I know I can deliver on it. I'm really good at it. I'll get better if I do it. I knew I had to do it because I couldn't unknow this information anymore and it felt right to me. I lost sleep for a week that I was going to quit my job. And I still didn't quit for a year. I knew I wasn't going to quit right away. I was just really upset that I was about to throw it all away. A lot of people were going to
Mm-hmm.
question that. And I was broken up about it. I mean, the senior partner would give me football tickets to the most dream football game because he's an alumni and I'm a fan. Like the relationships at this job were unbelievable. My boss, amazing. But I was like, I have to do this. And that decision, when you feel it, it's crazy. But that was the beginning. And then I did finally, about a year later, a couple other things going on happened, helped. But I'm like, okay, it's time. And I left. And it was like, okay, like I don't have a job anymore. I have to do this thing. And I'd been side hustling, so that helped a bit. But that was really like a moment
Mm-hmm.
of very big decision and betting on myself. And I'm very fortunate to say that I never had to go back to that job, which was always in the back of my mind. Like, if this doesn't work, I think they'll still have me to fundraise on a campaign or something, but I never had to go back and do that. It's all worked out pretty well.
What came about with that understanding of it? Like you just had it one day, you were just sleeping, like I got to make this a business. And then why did it take a year for you to disconnect? Like what had to be in motion for you as an entrepreneur to really feel like you had to let go of that moment? Because I can imagine that being a tough thing to put your 2 weeks notice in while you're launching into
Absolutely.
your own entrepreneurship thing.
Absolutely. So, I mean, well, first you realize like, okay, for it's very undervalued. So I knew that I was going to have a number of clients and do done for you services. At some point, I had to leave. And the realization came after I kind of started to get going, but I realized that you don't get taken seriously, especially if you're actually doing services for someone. You do not get taken seriously during the side hustle. We're grateful for the side hustlers, but if I can't talk to you unless it's after 5 o'clock, I mean, it's tough. It's tough. So I
Sure.
wasn't getting a lot of clients on the side. I would get a couple. I worked very hard at them and I proved myself, but it was really tough. And so that was part of it, but I also wanted to be smart. I was leaving a sure position. I was leaving my health insurance. I was leaving my profit sharing. I was leaving this. I was leaving this. I was leaving this. So I knew I had to at least prove to myself that I could handle the transaction. I can do the work. I can create a contract for the work. I can hustle for the business. I can follow up if they don't say yes right away. I can do this and manage at least becoming a freelancer, which is essentially what you're doing. And that took time. I also wanted to make sure I knew I was in the right world. And one of the things I did was my first client was unpaid. I just begged her to work with me. But you can always get value for unpaid work in that situation. And one of the ways that I got value was I got testimonials from her and things like that. She was always a great recommendation. But she also sponsored me, or her brand sponsored me to go to my first conference where I could kind of mix and mingle with some thought leaders, attend some talks, see if I was getting good information from the blogs I was reading back home. And that conference was about 3 months before I actually no, it was very soon, very right before, probably 1 to 2 months before I gave my notice. And I just remember being at that conference and thinking, this is who I am. Like, not
Mm,
only is this exactly where I want to be, I'm going to speak on that stage. And it's so cool because the first keynote speech I ever saw in my life was at that conference, which now I can't remember the name of it, which is very funny because they changed it after a while. It was something else. Oh, it was called Blog World. At the keynote speaker of Blog World was Scott Stratton. And
Mm.
I listened to Scott Stratton on stage, and he was so awesome. He was so motivating. He was so funny. His brand was awesome. And I was like, oh, I want to do that. I want to do that. And now I'm on the Vayner speaker roster and speak internationally, and he's on the roster with me, which is
Mm.
the coolest. And
That's
now
pretty
we
cool.
can call each other friends. So that was a moment where I put myself in an immersive environment. And that also helps you with decision making. Sometimes you might find that your coach hosts a retreat or some kind of like a small mastermind group. Those are unbelievably valuable moments for you to get your footing because we're usually working from home or working in our own vacuum in a lot of ways, whatever business we have. And if you don't get that outside feedback from people who actually know what you're going through, not just outside feedback from the naysayers and the cheap seats, but the outside feedback from people who actually know what you're going through so you can see the clearing, you won't make it if you don't do that. You really won't
How
because
how
it's
hard was
tough.
that for you? Because I know like did you have parents that supported you in that entrepreneurship journey? Were they entrepreneurs? Like what inspired you to kind of like know that it was possible to do? Like did you have
My
some background from that?
Yeah, I didn't have a ton of support there. To be honest, I
Yeah.
didn't have people who were making me feel bad. I'm very grateful for that. But I didn't necessarily have unbelievable support. My grandmother was an entrepreneur. She owned a dry cleaner. And that is the only entrepreneur I pretty much think I've ever met up until up until I started to become known of what an entrepreneur was. I'm sure I met many of them. I just I had no idea. And
Hmm.
so I really didn't have that support, but there was I don't know how to explain it. And if you ever get this feeling, you are so lucky. I was so lucky to have such deep clarity in what I was doing and what I was looking into to get reassurance of what I was doing. I was just able to shock everyone around me. I had literally no one around me that was like, that's a great idea, except for the person who said, you'd be good at this, you should start a business. And I didn't see her every day. She wasn't my best friend. I mean, she's a great friend, but she wasn't my best. She wasn't holding my hand. I didn't have
Yeah.
anyone. I didn't have anyone. I just had that clarity.
What kind of mindset did you have to create? I know you're huge on this and health and in faith and in everything. How does mindset play into this from your story at the very beginning? And how do you coach people now through building everything that they need on their own personal brand and just start? Because I know so many people they get caught up in the weeds so much with some of the things
Yeah.
that they need to. How do you end up coaching people through that and instilling that belief like this gal that did that for you that then spun up this whole next year of you trying to find a way to get out of your job and really build something on your own?
I think the active word there is build. There's something about looking at everything like it's just a machine and it's either running or it's not. And if it's not running, you can fix it or play with it or tweak it or do different things. And so that's one side of it. And I think I got better at looking at things more like this is just a machine. It's not that my product sucks. I just didn't do a good job of packaging it so somebody understands how fabulous it is that they would buy it, right? That's just a little machine issue. What really changed my life, I think, is obviously having faith has taken me very far, especially during really challenging times. But I don't know if you've ever heard of Ryan Holiday. Ryan Holiday
Yeah.
is a really, really wonderful thought leader on Stoicism teachings. And he's also on the Vayner speaker roster, actually. He wrote many books, but the book that I adore the most is The Daily Stoic. And he actually inspired me to end up writing my own page a day reader, 365 Days of Good Morning, Good Life.
Mm.
And The Daily Stoic is something I picked up every single morning for 3 years. and I read it, and I read it. I read it the first year. The second year, I read it and made highlights and underlines. And the third year, I was like, well, what am I going to do now? The third year, I started writing my own summaries in the margins of what
Mm,
I was interpreting from what I was reading. And then I was about to write my own page a day reader. So I was like, I better stop reading this one if I'm going to write my own. But I believe there's a lot you can learn from Stoic teachings because so much of what we have to deal with in this world is the projection of the position that someone is in. Every time someone says, I have your best interest, every time someone says that's a bad idea, everyone that's saying anything to you at any point that feels weird to you or is just them trying to give you information in the way that they know how is a projection of their life and their experience. And I think that's been the biggest takeaway for me after studying Stoicism because it made me feel so much more confident that I could do the best I could do in the moment I was in with the experience I have and just learn from my own mistakes there. If I can take information from others who can tell me other messy things to skip over and do a better job of, awesome. But I don't have to be overly concerned about making a mistake or looking a little silly or trying something new if I just realize that at any moment I may not be here anymore. And
mm,
so why not just try it? And for the people who are worried about me, I can give them the reassurance by being completely and utterly successful. There was one moment I remember specifically. My dad was just, he's very good at like having conversations with me without being like, we need to sit down and talk. It would just be random. And was sitting on the couch. I think I was in business for myself for about a year or two at that point. Probably, no, it was the first year for sure. Cause he said, I just wish, we're just talking. I was just like, oh, I do business and these clients. He goes, I just wish you could go somewhere and just make $90,000 and be happy. I was like,
really?
Dad, I've made double that this year. And I just remember him going, you have? I'm like, yeah. And because once you actually have a money conversation with someone, that was the other thing, not being educated on being open about that and how we can be open about it in ways that aren't weird, that you might actually be doing okay. And if you handle your finances appropriately and all these things, like you can do so well for yourself, working for
Hmm.
yourself rather than trading time for money for what? How exciting, a $90,000 paycheck. Like that is exciting for a lot of people, but at that point I had crushed that goal and I was still new to the game. So then it became about sustaining it. So you just realize that people want the best for you. They don't know what else to say when they've not had the experience that you're working toward. And so anyway, I think that on the mindset side, I trust in God and I have practiced stoicism as much as humanly possible because it's taken me a long way. And I realize that everyone's doing their best and they're just trying to look out for you or they're trying to protect themselves and make themselves feel better. And none of that has anything to do with me most of the time, and I can move on accordingly.
Hmm. With everything that you teach, what are the applicable actual steps that you tell people just to help them get over having to spin their wheels and just take action on the things that are most important? What are some of those principles or habits that you teach people that they need to ingrain and adopt into their life?
I love that question. Like I said at the beginning, it's all about becoming that decision maker, right? Just
Okay.
become a decision maker. So I want to offer something to your audience if they have any interest. If you go follow me on Instagram, send me a DM with the word action. I have an extraordinary action framework. It's something I offer to my coaching clients, but I like to give away all my stuff for free. And you'll find that the very first step is to identify a problem. We're so busy trying to figure out what the next action steps are all the time that we have too many on our plate and we're doing all the things. And we forget which one of those things was the most important because it's solving a problem. So we
Mm.
fill up our time with all these things and we do all these steps and we say, I have to be here. I have to do this. We have to start a podcast. We have to have this. We have to make these shorts. We have to get more clients. We have to send 100 million messages. We have to send this email campaign. There's always going to be more things to do, but we're always just going to not get far enough if we don't have clarity on the why. So the first step in that process is identify the problem. Like, what are we trying to solve? And so that's my advice most of the time, because somebody doesn't come to the conclusion like, I need a personal brand. No, if we all could, we would just stay home and not be known by anyone and make money all kinds of different ways that have nothing to do with our face. But there's a reason why leveraging that is useful. And so we need to make sure that we're very clear on why we do it so that we can present ourselves in the best way possible as the brand that we want to be, and sharing the personable parts of ourselves that actually factor in. A lot of people get confused and they think they share their personal brand means to share every single aspect of yourself. It does not.
Right.
We don't want it. Don't bring it. Like, not interested. So I really think it comes down to, what problem are we trying to solve, so that then you can reduce everything down to simple solutions. And I always say simple does not mean easy.
Mm-hmm.
Usually easy is complex and simple is hard. So I would recommend you find the probably hard but simple steps to solve your problem, so that you can then get focused on what the master plan is and the actions that you need to take. If we got the big issues, the big problems off of our plate, there are enormous amounts of things that we could do, go further, achieve more, and potentially do less at the same time. And so that's what I would say. The very first step is answer the question, what problem are you trying to solve? Because if you get good at that and being solutions oriented, you can do anything.
How much of the resiliency that you had to come up with when you started your entrepreneurship journey, and even sticking with some of these things, because you've had to pivot along the way, and some of the resiliency, the grit, the focus that you had in all these different ventures, the different directions of everything, how much was being obsessive about what you were doing and focusing on, as well as obsessive about learning so many of the stuff that you had to do? Like, how much of, like, you were talking about reading books and uh, joining groups and courses and programs, like how much of that was a huge play into the success you have now?
It was a huge aspect, but I couldn't, I can tell you a time I was stressed about it, but I couldn't sit here and say like it was a grind. And I think that speaks to how excited I was. I was going to say obsessed, but the reason for my obsession was how excited I was. Every day, I mean, I wanted to wake up early. I was
Mhm.
excited to get to the computer when my job was to tweet and say good morning. Like, it's not that simple anymore. Now it's Instagram, but it's like I was excited to do that every day. So excited. And so then reading my favorite blogs and seeing what the latest information was, for the first 10 years of social media, there were new platforms constantly, new platforms, new tools. And it was like, it was Christmas every time. I couldn't wait. Nowadays, I don't feel that way. Okay. When there's a new platform, I'm like, nope, 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 nope. Somebody else could do that for me. Nope. Mm-mm. But there was that honeymoon period. And so that was a big part of it. And I wanted to absorb all this information. I wanted to research it because I knew it was making me better and it was giving me an edge. And it really was. I mean, the more actionable you were in the first 10 years of social media, you stood out, okay? Because you had staying power, you had persistence, and there were only so many people that could stick with one or two platforms at a time. And if you did, then you were going to be remembered. So I feel like that helped a lot. And I'll tell you, it never felt like a grind. I just remember my boyfriend at the time wanted me to go on a trip, and I did go. And it was very important to him that we go visit his family in Maine. His family had been off the grid for 30 years. So here I was in the first year of my business, and he's like, well, you can travel whenever you want. Let's go. And I was so disappointed. I was like, I'm not going to have a cell phone signal. I'm not going to have a computer for a week. Are you crazy? It was the worst. It was the worst. And I was mostly devastated for the whole trip, except for it was really cool. I got to see a moose in person. But other than that, I was pretty devastated. And I can't, every other thing I can think of is, yes, I absorbed so much. I was obsessed with reading books. I was obsessed with listening to podcasts, watching people's YouTube tutorials. and reading blog posts and becoming the thought leader in my world. I was obsessed with it. And it was so exciting. If you ever get that feeling, ride that wave. Just as broke as you might be, ride that wave because it is the coolest thing and it is what's going to get you so far ahead down the road when you've put that time and energy in. And I know a lot of people need help with confidence and they get it from information absorption. And I did too, but mostly because it just made me feel even more sure that I'd made the right choice.
I know there's a lot of really educated non-action people out there that want the best. They have a vision of greatness. They have a goal in mind of wanting to become someone, do something great, but they lack the staying power, like you talked about, or even the action steps to even approach it because they have so many hangups. And I know it's oftentimes people have a limiting belief about what's possible, or they had some haters, or they feel bad about it. Like um, you've been able to hit record for over a decade for yourself. You've built a routine. You're a go-getter. You're a person that's like actual steps for that. Do you contribute that to you and just pushing forward, or do you sometimes feel like high performers are cut from a different cloth in a way? And their performance or their personality types, they're just leaning in to that, or they had some past that push them toward their greatness. What do you feel like are the contributing factors of someone that's succeeding at a high level like you are right now, and the ones that you see that start and fade, start and fade, start and fade, and they never build traction in their life or their future?
I think it's an interesting point that jadedness factors in. It's not sustainable. I think when you have a chip on your shoulder, it's a good start. And, the chip on my shoulder really, I think, was that I didn't have deep friendships for most of my young life. And I just thought I didn't belong anywhere. So when you pair that jadedness with the discovery that, oh, wow, this feels really cool. This feels like a thing that could be very me. And by the way, I've never been an on-camera smiley person. My mom can't find any photos of me as a child. I got rid of them all. My sister was the cheerleader, outgoing one. All things measured as children, I was not the one. I wasn't the one. And so the cut from a different cloth, I believe is culturally driven. Anytime, and I'm going to over categorize here, anytime I've come across someone who is not a high performer, that is genuinely just going through life with the way that it blows, and no matter how they feel about it, but just blowing with the wind, I think it has to do with who they surround themselves with, period. And I never found the best version of myself younger because I didn't have culturally what I think I should have needed at that point. But now I'm super grateful for it because nothing would have happened that has if I wouldn't have made the discovery after such disappointing years. So I don't think you're cut from the wrong cloth at all. I just think that there takes a certain level of decision maker to say, oh my gosh, I think I've discovered something that could really be my thing. And being able to go full bore toward it, no matter what anyone around you is thinking or saying to you, that does take a good push. But if you're not a high performer, you can get that push. Somebody will push you. If somebody is incentivized to push you and you decide you need to be pushed, you can pay somebody to push you, and they will. You just have to do a couple things really well to become a high performer. And somebody will tell you what to do and they will hold you accountable. So I just don't think you're cut from another cloth. I think you just need to find your thing. And there is very likely a backstory that's happened with you that has caused you to find your thing, that has caused that thing to be motivating, interesting, enlightening for you. So I think that's what I think about it.
With how do you balance things right now? And get your opinion on this, Amy. You had a baby, and then you ran a marathon. You have you're a
Half
well
marathon.
published
Everyone always
author.
calls it a marathon. I only did 13.1, okay? I have not done the full yet. I haven't done the full, just for the record.
But with everything that you're doing and aspiring to do, how do you fit everything in? How do you think of like balance and trying to walk through your business, your ventures, also raising two beautiful daughters and trying to like have time for your spouse? Like, how do you balance all of this? What are some of the keys of success or things that you do in view of that?
I have a really unpopular opinion about this. Balance, I believe, is this word that we've all come up with that ultimately just means we're looking for outside permission that we're doing the right thing at the right time all the time. When we say we want balance, let's say as a woman in the workplace with children and a spouse or a partner, you're just trying to check yourself. Well, what's everyone else doing? How is everyone else spending time with their children? Or how are they getting that time? How are they building massive businesses but still able to put their hand on what these kids are going to be like when they grow up? I think that that's genuinely looking for outside approval for how you're doing things. If we just looked at it like every single one of these things was a choice, every one. Most of us tried to have children and then did. That was a decision we made for our lives. So we have to say, with the same intentionality, that I'm also going to have work that supports what that life with this family was supposed to be like. So, all that to say, I just find what works in every season of my life. Why did it make sense to train for a half marathon postpartum? I'll tell you. I was on literally doing nothing but feeding a baby for 6 weeks. And then I got cleared to work out. And I was like, okay, great. I would like to work out. I can't go to the gym. I got my baby. Okay. I can work out in the garage. Cool. We'll do that. But the easiest thing in the world was when the baby needs to sleep, I can put her in a jogging stroller and go for a run. I then have paired two things that I cared a lot about, her getting her sleep in and me getting my run in, and I did them at one time. And I would decide when I would run based on when she takes the worst naps, to be honest. Because if she takes a great nap in her crib at home, I want to be doing email when she's in the crib at home. Or not email, but you get the point, work.
Yeah, yeah.
But if she takes a terrible nap in the afternoon, then I'm going to get her in the jogging stroller. She's going to be out. She's going to be out in a jogging stroller. Like it's going to be perfect. I'm finding ways to batch my life in the way that makes sense. And the other thing was, I have the ability to make decisions in my business that I am unavailable because I've been building my personal brand and building a business over a long period of time. So when I said this kid's going to stay home with me for a year, I can only deliver on outcomes. It is actually few and far between that I get on a specific appointment. It's with my coaching clients and the podcast that I think are going to be awesome that I'm going to do as an interview. And that's it. Every other deliverable in my work is I will get it done when I can get it done because then it has to work around when the baby's asleep or when this is taken care of, this is taken care of. I don't work on time, I work on outcomes. I got my life to that point. I designed my work to be at that point so that now I can make those decisions. I can stay home with my kid for as long as I want. Do I need other support in order to be able to do that? Sure. So I'm not trying to brag about that. I genuinely just want the same thing for entrepreneurs who have said, I want to work for myself, but they forgot the part about not being a forever freelancer. You were supposed to start the business and then sustain it without you. So don't skip that part because then when the time comes that you want to be able to give those really dedicated 18 years to a couple of people, then you can make more of those moments happen. It's
Mm-hmm.
easier said than done, but for crying out loud, do part of it. Get a little closer. Make the decisions that are going to make that work.
This is amazing. Your story, the different things that you've contributed here. What is there some specific things that aren't always talked about that you know that are the keys of success that's been helpful for you or for other people you've seen?
Something I've learned in the last few years, and Dan Martell, our business coach, has been really a light on this, is when I was in this come up, especially in the creator community, it was like a flex to say I have a team. Like, oh, I'm gonna have my team do it. Like, I don't just vlog for myself. I have a team, right? It was a little bit of a flex. And so we grew the team, and I've learned now from Dan the mistakes we made on that. It was never that they weren't the right people. We had really great people. It was we had them working in the wrong areas of the business because it gets really
Hmm.
sexy in the creator world to just have a million different things that you've created. This podcast, this show, this podcast, this thing over here, this ebook. I've written 3 books. There's a million things we can create. So if you forget that you need to be hiring according to how you buy your time back, to quote his book, I mean, that was the game changer. And I had only done that in certain areas. I'd hired to get my time back on the admin side, but then I was like, I want you to start this podcast and it's your baby, so you run with it. But that podcast had not proven concept, didn't bring a dollar in. So it
Mm.
just made no sense. So what happens when something's not bringing money in and everything else is sustaining it? The person on that project is let go. So I think it's not talked about enough the appropriate way to bring people on because all we're hearing is I need support, I need support, I need support, but they don't know what they need support on because we think we need to work, 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 work. So I'm not going to ask somebody to do the work I'm doing because if I'm going to prove I'm an entrepreneur who's in it for the long haul, I better keep doing my work. No, that's a terrible idea. That's exactly what you should be hiring for, are the things that you're doing so that you don't end up in a situation where the business is completely reliant on you, thus a forever freelancer. So I wish that was more talked about. And the reason why I appreciate Dan and that information is sometimes you don't get this stuff until you're really deep into a relationship with a coach or whatever, and it's behind 10 paywalls. And all of a sudden you're like, wait,
Hmm.
what? Like, and you don't even know you're bleeding out money. So
Mm.
that that is what I would wish people were talking about.
With what you teach your students with building a brand, is there some specific principles that you help your students with on that?
Well, just be obvious. That's what I've been telling people. We romanticize branding, we romanticize this whole ride, and we forget how to actually sell ourselves. And then when we hear we have to sell ourselves, we get scared and run away. And I think that a lot of these things would be solved if we would all just be a lot more obvious about how we could get hired or how the business would succeed. Because there's a lot of information out there. And rather than using the excuse of it's oversaturated, just be the one that's more obvious and more clear about what you do to help people. And that's going to take you a long way. If you do that and you are consistently creating information in the form of content that promotes who you are, you can go to these social platforms and be less wary about who's watching you because you're making it for one specific type of person, your perfect audience, your perfect customer. And that's, I think, what the biggest hangup is with personal branding. We're all worried about our friends and people we went to high school with and family seeing our stuff. And what are we going to do when they ask me a question? I'm still figuring it out myself. I don't have answers to these questions. Okay, who cares? If the right person to hire your company comes along to your account and you convert that into a client, were you not successful? Do you have to have 1 million followers for that to happen? You don't, but you wouldn't know until you try. So
Mm.
be obvious. What do you want? What do you want someone to ask you? What do you want someone to hire you for? What do you want to be known for? Make it obvious. And that's what your personal brand really is about.
Amazing. Amazing. Love it. Well, Amy, it was so amazing to have you on the podcast. How can people find you, connect with you further? I'll leave everything on the links down below of how they can connect with you. But what's the best place to have people follow you and connect you with
I'm just
further?
a big fan of chatting with people on Instagram. Come follow me. You can search me, Amy Landino. My handle is @schmatastic. Send me a DM with the word coach if that's something that sounds right for you. But if you just love watching free videos of a lot of good information, it's all at youtube.com/AmyTV. We're 450,000 subscribers strong, and it's been the time of my life for almost 15 years over there. So check it out.
Amazing. Well, thanks again. But until next time, we'll see ya.